The basketball tournament has been something that's been around for a few years and is wildly popular, not only with basketball fans, but with sports fans. Now, the soccer tournament, the TST, is coming. I'm very pleased to be joined by Dan Friel. He's the co-founder of TBT and TST. Dan, welcome. You're down in Louisiana, in New Orleans. Welcome to the Atlantic Sports Wire. Tell us, please, about the TST. What's it all about?
I mean, simply put, it's $1 million World Cup style tournament. Winner takes all. One team is going to escape with $1 million and bragging rights for a year, and then 31 other teams are going to go home empty-handed. But it's the kind of the offspring of TBT, which we started in 2014, and we're just thrilled to be ramping this up next week in Cary, North Carolina.
I was so excited when I saw an Instagram post a while back about this tournament, and then I started to do some research on it. And again, you covered some of it, but winner take all, $1 million, 32 teams, 7 versus 7. It's taking place June 1st to 4th, as you mentioned, in Cary, North Carolina. What are some other things that you can tell us about the workings of this tournament, how it all is going to play out?
Yeah, I mean, I think that simply it's going to be a World Cup style event. We've got 8 groups of 4. We've got teams from literally all around the world. We've got a team from Far East Asia. We've got multiple teams from the UK. We've got teams representing Premier League teams, Wolves and West Ham United. Ryan Reynolds, I know Canada's own Ryan Reynolds' team, Wrexham, is going to be competing in TST. We've got a team of U.S. women that have won multiple World Cups and Olympic medals. We've got teams that basically anyone that is a soccer fan would be intrigued by, interested in. And I think overall it's going to be a great event. We're very, very excited, I think, more than anything else, to test out some of the new rules that we have in place. We're going to utilize what some would call almost a golden goal with a twist. We're calling it the target score time. And during that period of time, every game is going to end on a goal, typically from the run of play. It's going to be amazing to watch. But I think the drama more than anything else, we expect to be very, very high based upon what we've seen with TBT over the years. It just is an event where, as we see in basketball, everybody is competing to win that one prize and there's nothing else to go home with. And so as a result of that, what you get is maximal effort all the time. And I think as any sports fan that has kind of at various points watched in baseball what you would call the dog days of summer, in hockey, I guess you would call it the lead up to the playoffs, where there's just not a lot of action going on and it's not necessarily the best that you're going to get. TBT and TST are the exact opposite of that. There's no moment at which you can let your guard down, because if you do, you're going to lose. And if you lose, you go home and you don't get anything for just competing. So from that perspective, we're really, really excited to bring this concept to soccer. And I think that, I've got a lot of anxiety is the wrong word, but certainly a lot of excitement about seeing these games actually get played and to see exactly how it unfolds on a 7v7 basis.
Because of your involvement in being a co-founder of the TBT, maybe this was a natural progression, but what was the genesis of this? How did it come together?
We had been doing the basketball tournament since 2014, and it's had a good series of growth. It's a long-term project for us, but basketball was never necessarily the exclusive path that we wanted to follow. There were other opportunities to do other sports and are other opportunities to do other sports. And so when Mike Volk, Henry Timbon, and Aleko Eskandarian came to us with this concept for a 7v7 event, it was kind of a no-brainer for us to investigate it at a minimum. And the more we started digging into it, the more we realized just what a wonderful opportunity it could be to bring this sort of intensity and this pattern that we've developed in basketball to soccer. I think the thing that I always think about is that when we were kind of formulating the idea for TBT to begin with way back in 2010, 2011, I was watching a ton of soccer myself, and I'm sort of a late arrival. And it really wasn't until I was an adult that I really started to understand the importance of the game internationally. And so from that perspective, I was watching a ton of soccer, and the FA Cup in England really was sort of one of the foundational blocks that we started to evaluate. And I was always thinking about as we were developing the concept for TBT. It's an open event. Anybody can compete in it. And then there's a single winner that's crowned at the end. And so soccer has sort of always been in the DNA of what we're doing as a company and as an event for basketball. When the opportunity came to do something unique and different, and that's not already being done in soccer, that's kind of exactly the goal that we have with everything that we do, is that we want to be unique and different and fun, and obviously present things in as compelling of a fashion as we can. And so the 7v7 concept for us was really just almost a no-brainer once we started to really dig into it.
And in terms of fans that may be used to the quote unquote regular rules of soccer, what are some things that they'll see a little different in terms of the rules, field size, etc.?
Sure. I mean, the field's going to be smaller. Obviously, 7v7 is a little bit of a different dynamic in terms of strategy. But we do think that the components of what makes soccer great are still going to be in place in TST. The field's going to be 65 yards long by 45 yards wide. So essentially, if you took a traditional soccer pitch, you're going to be able to divide it in two. So we'll have two fields on each large size pitch. The games are going to be 20-minute halves, and then we go into that untimed target score time period, which we can discuss in a second. But beyond that, there's no slide tackling. There's no throw-ins. All balls are going to be kicked into play. And there's a couple of other, sort of unique rules as it pertains to how TST is going to operate. There's going to be subs on the fly, for example, more similar to what you see in hockey than you would see in soccer. You get an unlimited number of subs in and out. In the test games that we've seen and some of the practices that I know that some of the teams that are competing in TST have been undertaking, the game is very, very fast. Like one comment that I saw one player make on a video that I was watching was that it's almost more like a basketball game in the sense that it's so up and down. There's so many turnovers in possession and there's so many opportunities to score. And so as a result of that, like our expectation is that you're going to see a higher scoring version of soccer probably than you're used to otherwise, which I think everybody likes. I think everybody enjoys when they score goals in soccer, and certainly the elation that everyone feels is going to be high. It's not going to be a situation where the games are going to be 25-23 or anything like that, but certainly I think you're going to see more 7-6s than you will see 1-0s.
And you mentioned the high scores that you've seen and potentially high scores. As I'm listening to all this, I'm starting to feel bad for the goalies. Are the nets going to be the same size?
No, they're a little smaller. It'll be a 6.5 foot high net by I think it's 18 feet wide. It's a custom goal that we're having developed for this. It's not so much different than what you would normally see in small-sided soccer, but it is a little bit bigger so that we can enable some of those shots from maybe outside the 12-yard box. It's a 12-yard box instead of an 18. Outside of that 12-yard box, we still have a chance of going in.
What was the buy-in like? What was it like when you put this out there and waited to see who would even want to compete or want to take part?
We learned a few things from launching TBT in 2014 that we applied to TST. One of the things that happened when we launched TBT to begin with is that there was so much skepticism that it was real, that we were really going to give away at the time $500,000. And so what we kind of learned from that was that it's important to have trusted and well-known and enthusiastic supporters at a very, very early stage. So before we even decided to launch the event, we reached out to a couple of individuals and a couple of teams. One of them was Clint Dempsey, who, for my money is the greatest American soccer player ever. He doesn't lend his name to stuff very easily. He's a well-known name internationally, played in the Premier League for a very long time, and obviously, is tied actually with Landon Donovan as our leading scorer in U.S. national team history. So we reached out to Clint Dempsey and were able to get his support from a very early stage of the event. We also reached out to #United, which is a club that had developed a online fan base on the basis of gaming and things along those lines that turned into a real soccer club, a real football club, as they would call it, in the UK. And so Hashtag and Clint Dempsey were sort of the initial two teams that we launched with, Team Dempsey and #United. With the credibility of Clint Dempsey domestically and the sort of online recognition that #United had, we were able to immediately get a level of credibility that the event was going to be a success, one that you want to be a part of, and things along those lines. TST is a little different from TBT in the sense that TST is an entry fee-based event. Teams paid money to get into the event. It varied early on. It was $10,000 early on for the first 10. 15,000 for the second 10, and then 20,000 for the final 12. And so, and it went up even beyond that because we reserved certain slots for latecomers as well. So in any event, it's a variable pricing as it goes through. All of those teams committed those funds to get into TST, and they're spending significantly more than that on their clubs themselves, whether it's on travel, whether it's because of the need to pay certain players to actually play. It's really been an awesome development to watch. And so for us, one of the key moments early on was that one of the clubs from Liga MX in Mexico, Club Necaxa, reached out on the day that we announced it. And an old friend from the initial TBT 2014 named Matt Walsh, who's involved in that ownership group of Necaxa in Mexico, said we have to be a part of this event. I know how good TBT is, and I know that you're going to do a good job with TST. So that's a little bit of the credibility that we had over 9 years of having done TBT at that point. And from that point, once Necaxa was in, then that became really, really real. And a lot of the conversations that we had subsequent to that, from inquiries or whether it's recruiting efforts that we undertook, led to other clubs, like West Ham United and Wrexham and Wolves. Dortmund is going to put in a team. Dortmund's one of the biggest clubs in the world. I mean, they're Champions League every single year. They're in the running to win the German league this year. You've got clubs from, as I said, the Far East. You've got a who's who of American soccer. Stephen Ireland, who played, for Man City before Pep Guardiola. He's going to play along with his son, who's 18 years old. I mean, I just think the storylines of this are incredible. And, luckily we've got a track record of, first of all, running good events. And secondly, actually, paying out the money that we say we're going to pay. And that credibility, I think, has really enabled us to be able to pull off TST as we have so far.
Just some incredible teams, incredible players that are going to obviously make the level of soccer beyond what you could maybe even try to imagine as a fan. But let's go back for a second. One of the big things that resonates with me and a lot of fans, why they love the TBT, is the Elam ending. It's been adopted in a number of other leagues and tournaments. I know the Canadian Elite Basketball League here in Canada adopted the Elam ending. I love it. What's the Elam ending version for the TST?
So as I kind of stated, you're going to play two 20-minute halves. At the conclusion of that second 20-minute half, you're going to establish a target score. And the target score is basically one more than the team that's in front. So if the score is 7-6 at the end of those two 20-minute halves, the target score is 8, and the first team to 8 is going to win. It enables teams that are behind to be able to come back and win. But it also requires the team that's in front to actually score a goal to win the event and to win that game. And so from that perspective, it's a similar concept to what we're doing in basketball, where we also play to a target score. Numbers are a little different, obviously, in basketball than they are in soccer, because the scoring is much more common in basketball than it is in soccer. But in any event, all you're going to do is add one to the team in front's score, and then whoever reaches that goal first is going to win. Score is tied, it's 5-5, target score is 6, next goal wins. One of the unique twists that we're going to do in target score time, as we're calling it, is that if a winner is not determined after 5 minutes, both teams are going to lose a player. So you go from 7v7 to 6v6. Another 5 minutes passes, it's now 5v5. Another 5 minutes passes, it's 4v4. So in theory, after 30 minutes, you could be down to 1v1. And, I basically, like, the next punt over somebody's head is going to win the game. So it's going to be a lot of fun to watch that happen, if it ever does. We'll see.
I would love to see it get down to, at least one of the games go to a 1v1. Yeah, I think that would be spectacular.
It would be like the end of, I think it's Rocky 2. Is it Rocky 2 or Rocky 1 where Apollo and Rocky are just like slugging it out at the end and neither one of them can stand up anymore? I think that's what it would be like. The other part of this too that I think is going to be really interesting to watch is that they're playing a lot of games in a really short period of time. I realize they're only 40-minute games plus target score time, but they're going to be playing on Thursday, June 1st morning. Then they're going to be playing on Thursday, June 1st evening for their first two group stage games. Then they turn around and play again on Friday morning for their third group stage game. And then if they advance to the knockout round, first two in the group are going to advance. Then they're playing again Friday night. Then they're playing again on Saturday. And then they're playing again on twice on Saturday. And then they're playing again on Sunday. So I do think that the fitness of the teams is definitely going to be important.
What do you hope for over the next few years?
Well, I think the first thing is that it's sustainable year over year, and that it can come back year over year, and it's something that people really look forward to. We've sold a bunch of tickets for this already. I think we're at 97 or 98% tickets sold, very close to a sellout overall. So I think sustainability and the return of it year over year is important. But I think beyond that, obviously, if there's something that we can do to impact the game in a beneficial way, then we certainly want to do that too.
Just from a youth standpoint and grassroots level, I see this as something that kids would be really interested in. It's fun. It's exciting. It would be quick. It's a little bit different. Parents would love it. I'll certainly be a proponent of it, and I'm going to mention it as much as I can. Where can people find out more about this tournament, whether it's through social media, through a website? Where can they get more information and dig in?
Our website is thetournament.com. Thetournament.com. It's on the little board behind me, and that's a TBT one, not necessarily for TST. So thetournament.com is our website. Social handles for soccer are TST7v7 on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, etc.
You're originally from Boston and you were a Boston sports guy. For someone that has the opportunity now to be involved with TBT and now TST, for a Boston sports guy growing up, what does this mean to you?
I mean, it's the funnest employment I've ever had in my life, obviously, and it's something that I feel a lot of pride of ownership in the sense that we've started this. John and I kind of conceived of the idea to begin with, and now we're developing it. As a sports fan, it's just awesome to watch. Like I grew up in the '80s watching the Celtics and the Bruins and everybody else, and those teams played so hard in those days. And so all we're trying to do is replicate that level of intensity on a year in, year out basis. And we see it every year. So it's really been fantastic.
32 teams. We've talked about a lot of the great players and great teams, but for you as a sports fan, what's the one team that you want to keep a close eye on?
I think it's partly because they seem to be from the most beautiful part of the world, but this Como 1907 team that's going to compete looks loaded. Cesc Fabregas is going to suit up. He's going to coach the team. They've got 5 or 6 young players, 23 to 30, from their first team division in Serie B, first team in Serie B in Italy. And they've got 6 or 7 youth players from their academy program. They also have I don't know if you know if I'm supposed to announce this yet, but they've got I'll put it this way, a very, very famous Canadian basketball player / soccer fan who may or may not support. I think his team is Tottenham Hotspur. So he's involved in the team as well. I think the whole thing is going to be awesome, but there's a couple of teams that I certainly have my eye on. I think the thing I'm really intrigued about with Como is that based upon the roster that they've submitted in their final 18, they are clearly coming to win the event. And I think that any team that is lined up and excited and wants to win this $1 million is one that I'm going to root for. And as far as I can tell, that's 32 out of 32 right now.
I think the Canadian that you may be referencing, I won't say name, but fans will probably figure it out. I think one All-Star game, he headed a basketball up for a dunk in the slam dunk competition. I think that's who we might be talking about. But anyway, you mentioned basketball. I got to squeeze this in as well before I let you go. We could just talk all day, Dan, but Chris Paul is part of the ownership group for TST. Maybe just a little bit about that. How did he get involved?
Yeah, I mean, he and his brother CJ are huge sports fans, and they had been watching basketball with TBT in the last, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, I guess, in the summer on ESPN. And so they reached out to us and asked how they can get involved. And obviously we responded to that email very, very quickly. And, over the years, we've kind of developed a great relationship with Chris and his brother CJ. And, one thing led to another, and Chris is now an investor in the event and very, very excited about the soccer development too.
Yeah, that's a really cool connection. Well, Dan Friel, co-founder of TBT and TST, thank you so much for your time today down in New Orleans, Louisiana. We appreciate it, and we're very excited to watch this tournament take place June 1st to 4th in Cary, North Carolina. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
In Halifax, I'm Scott Squires for the Atlantic Sports Wire.